Inside BBI with John and Eric begins now.
All right, well, welcome back to another edition, a special edition, a Sunday morning edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt. With me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And Eric, this is our special welcome back, Evan Neal show. No, just kidding. So it is this morning. I know people are asking. It's just water. Just water. It's too early. Got a lot of stuff going on, so we're good. But yeah, so a lot of stuff's happened since our last show. So real quick though. Anything before we get to specifics, just anything just surprisingly stand out to you? Because we missed comedic gold by just logging off too soon before the Evan Neal stuff was announced.
Yeah, people were just saying, "Oh my God, if we just stayed on a little bit longer, they would have seen our reaction to Evan Neal coming back." So, which is to me is really surprising. I don't know how you feel, but I think it's there's no money tied to the contract. They could cut him right now and it wouldn't have any salary cap impact. It shows you how far he's fallen that nobody even offered him a $50 signing bonus. I mean, even a $50. I think it's also kind of interesting that he either had no takers for any other team in the league, or he, as somebody said on BBI, give him a little bit of credit that he came back here to prove to everyone he can still be a player. So in a way, if that was the case, I don't know if we should give him that much credit, but you could, if I was him, I would have been like, I want to go someplace else and just start over. But
you would think, right? I mean, and I'm serious. I'm 100% serious about what I'm about to say. I almost jokingly, as we were talking about like different possibilities, right? And I always screw his last name up, but Daniel, is it Falele?
Yeah.
So he's a huge guy, a lot. And I even said on the last episode, he's got a little bit of Evan Neal stuff in that he's not that great moving side to side, but he's a big power guy, knows thing. I almost jokingly said maybe they just re-sign Evan Neal and give him a shot too, because he kind of fits that mold. But I was like, yeah, that's crazy. I'm not even going to say that out loud.
You didn't want to get mocked.
Then we left, and I looked, and I thought it was a joke. I'm like, oh, Evan Neal signed. No, he didn't. So to be this early and re-sign here has to tell me his agent knew there wasn't going to be anybody knocking on their door anytime soon, and maybe the comfortability of not having to leave where he lives, all this other stuff right now, knowing that it's hanging by a thread regardless, just made more sense here.
I've always wondered, well, not always, I've wondered in the last couple of years with him how important football is to him. And maybe that's just me subjectively putting another layer to why is he so bad? And John Harbaugh talks about he only wants players that love football. So maybe John sat down with him, the new offensive line coach sat down with him, and maybe they just said, he's a big, and he is a better athlete than we do give him credit for. I know everyone has this image, and rightfully so, of him not being able to pass protect from right tackle, but it's not like he's not like this horribly terrible athlete who can't move. There is a reason he got drafted. It's the whole thing is just really weird. And maybe he is better suited to a power gap scheme if that's what we're going to run, and they're going to just try him. But again, it's no harm, no foul. If they sign somebody even more interesting, they can cut him. I just think it's interesting that if you had told me they were going to re-sign somebody, an offensive lineman that the Giants had drafted that was a free agent, I would have guessed it was Josh Ezeudu rather than Evan Neal, who Josh is still out there. So either that's a medical thing or his career is over too, because no one believes in him. But Josh is actually the one who played better last preseason, remarkably so. We were all like, oh my, and he was playing at left tackle. He looked good at left tackle. They played him at guard. So he's still out there, but we'll talk about other free agent guards. There are some still free agent guards out there if you're worried about that position with the Giants. And I think we should look at the depth chart and the offense and defense and see what's missing. Did you want to cover other players that have been signed and left since we were last on, or not yet?
Yeah, I think, why don't we jump into you have the transactions piece. Let's go ahead and jump into that, because I think that's where a lot of discussion is going to come. At first, the thing that stands out to me, usually you throw a question to me about, so I'm going to throw it to you. Are you surprised, though? I mean, Neal, Stinney, I guess you could throw Devin Singletary. A lot of guys that we thought they were just going to be wandering off into the sunset, the Giants have brought them back under the Harbaugh regime. I don't know that it necessarily means a big deal in terms of like they're expecting a lot from these guys, but I am surprised, though, that they did keep some of these guys that we thought were probably just going to be taken off.
I'm very surprised. And I don't mean that in a bad or a good way. I just didn't expect a lot of these guys. I'm bringing up the scorecard right now because there's been so many transactions. A lot of these guys, I just figured new coaching staff, the people that we sort of the names that most Giants fans don't even think about. Like, I remember when they re-signed Caleb Murphy, the overwhelming reaction on the website is, who the hell is Caleb Murphy? I don't even know who this is. And there's been guys like that they've brought back who I just thought they were sort of like the bottom of the roster. And either one of two things usually happens is those guys usually get signed late in free agency when everything's settled, or when you have a new coaching staff like this, a lot of them, they're just, they just churn over the roster and they're not there. So Harbaugh, who's very deliberate and very organized, they've been signing. It's almost like they want to get this roster set early. So you always have this initial rush of expensive free agents, and then these second, third tier guys usually come much later. They've been kind of rushing to get everybody signed. It's almost, I get the impression that he almost wants to get everything set now going into the OTAs and just not let it hang over him. But some of these guys, again, I'm talking about, and I'll list some names here, but Ryan Miller, the wide receiver, Art Green, who's a good special teams player, but Nick Jones, the cornerback, Caleb Murphy, who they got off of waivers, backup linebackers, Zaire Barnes. I mean, I don't think you and I thought somebody like that would be back.
No.
There's another guy at linebacker they brought back to him. Blanking right now, but I didn't think Isaiah Hodgins would be back. I thought Gunnar Olszewski there was a good chance he might be back, but I didn't think you and I didn't think Chris Manhurts would be back. I didn't think Aaron Stinney would be back. So it's guys like that they've been bringing these guys. And then one guy I thought would be back, Chris Board, who's on the list here. They cut him. And just so everyone knows, these are the transactions that have occurred since John and I were last on. So there's many, many more transactions than this. We just missed Evan Neal, and then these other ones happened since our last show. But Chris Board was a special teams captain for John Harbaugh and his special teams coach in Baltimore. And he was there for a while, and I thought he would be the one who would be, but they cut him. So I am surprised by some of these, and they've been very active in bringing in guys like in the last few days, like Elijah Campbell, Jason Pinnock, 2 safeties now. So the safety room is starting to fill up a little bit now, and So I don't know about you, but I'm surprised.
Yeah, there's a ton to take from this stuff. The surprise part is really the amount of back end depth and or guys who are really going to compete in camp for the back end depth that is being focused on now. Usually lots of times in free agency, at least in my opinion, and in case anybody thinks when I say it's egomaniacal, there was a thing that said I'm egomaniacal when I say I always like to say it's I'm not speaking for Eric, and I'm not rehashing somebody else's opinion. It's only my opinion. So if you want to mock it, it's me. It's not egomaniacal, so I apologize if that upsets you. But I am surprised that they spent so much time on the back end depth part in free agency, because most teams, you're trying to get first team guys, second team guys for sure. Some of these guys, we're signing guys that may not even make the team. We're filling those spots in. But then it's the position groups that we have, and you last said it before you sent it to me, and that's why I wanted to come back to you. I'm a little surprised at what's happening at safety. To bring in 2 more veteran safeties, again, no guarantee that one or both of them even make the team.
Right.
But when you do that, and you've already got 2 safeties on your team that I'm assuming are starting in Holland and Newman. Now you bring in 2 more veterans that you're bringing into that team. I mean, in some ways, if I was thinking Downs is an opportunity at 5, why am I spending so much, even camp fodder? Why am I adding so many to safety right now when I don't need to, if that's the case? So it's weird.
Wait,
it's weird.
Three safeties, John. Don't forget Ardarius Washington.
Right, earlier. That's right.
So there's 3 safeties that have been added, and again, and one of them's more of a special teams player, but again, he still plays safety. So I had the same thought about Downs. Again, I don't think it precludes them from taking Downs, but they've added 3 safeties to a room that you normally at most carry 5 people.
Right.
So,
right. And you've already got at least 5, not counting any other fodder pieces you might bring in going into and a lot of money. I mean, Holland's expensive.
Right.
So,
and they still have 3 that are so they've got a total of 8 safeties right now. We'll bring it up when we do the defense, but they have a total of 8 safeties on the roster under contract right now. And that includes Bo Braid, Raheem Lane, Patrick McMorris. These are guys, again, these are names that most Giants fans are like, who the hell are these guys? But they're on the roster. They haven't been cut. They're not expensive, so they can get rid of them at any time. But there are 8. We're really thin at a couple of places right now in terms of, again, it's early. Don't freak out. This is the thing. We're only not even a full week into free agency. It'll be tomorrow when we're a full week into it. But safety room is one of the areas that they've got a lot of bodies right now. So like you said, it's kind of, and I started a thread the other day. I said, again, it's probably silly to look at it this way, but they haven't signed any offensive linemen or defensive linemen. They re-signed Illuminor, they re-signed Stinney, so they kept some guys, but they haven't added any new guys, and that sticks out like a sore thumb to me. So if you're a need guy in the draft, you're thinking, oh my goodness, maybe they're going to go offense, defensive line. And again, some people are freaking out and say, no, you got to do best player available at 5. I get that, and I agree with that. But it does stick out that those are 2 places they haven't done anything. And like you said, 3 safeties. Oh, does that mean something?
Well, it's funny too, the offensive line, right? One of the things that came up when we were doing a preview and other people posted it and there was all this stuff was that the Giants might cut John Runyon to free up cap space. The Giants have the right side of their offensive line were free agents in Illuminor and Greg Van Roten. And then there was the thought that they might try to go get Linderbaum, thus JMS would be gone. And you could, in theory, you could have been replacing 4/5 of your offensive line. There's a good possibility right now because the Giants, it seems like they're in discussion with Van Roten and they could probably get that done anytime they want to, that if they bring back Van Roten, they will bring their starting 5 back again, plus Neal. That's 6. Stinney is 7. Stinney is 7. That's 7. Kupis is still on the roster. Technically, that's 8. I mean, this team will still have a ton of guys that we thought they probably would be moving on from.
It would be the same exact offensive line, except Schlottman isn't here. So, which is in a way is kind of crazy. And again, some Giants fans wanted that. So in a way, they got what they wanted. If that's what happens. So the good news is, do you want to talk about do you want to go through these real quick and then
let's go.
I think the big news in the last couple of days is the Giants have really changed their wide receiver room. So Calvin Austin and Darnell Mooney, both smaller wide receivers, both guys that have speed, can make huge plays down the field, explosive players, but again, lacking size. But they're also, you could make the argument. My phone's ringing here. Sorry about that. You can make the argument that they are maybe the second and third best wide receivers on the team right now. Depending, I'm not a big Slayton fan. So, and size I think has sort of said this on X as well too. You could make the argument that the two guys that they just signed on relatively cheap contracts are now much better than what we already had just a few days ago. So I don't know how you react to that, but I'm actually particularly intrigued with Calvin Austin. And Darnell Mooney had his best years under Matt Nagy in Chicago with not very good quarterbacks. He was a 1,000-yard receiver in Chicago who had 11 touchdowns, made a lot of big plays. He's not a run after the catch guy, but he gets deep. So he's come into an offense and a coordinator that he knows that he had his best years under, and he has a much better quarterback.
Yeah, I think first off, from the wide receiver side, I know there were some comments in here about like this. There are a bunch of small guys. I thought Harbaugh wants bigger guys. I don't necessarily know if that's true at wide receiver per se, because if you look at the Ravens, they had guys like Hollywood Brown, they had Zay Flowers, they had smaller guys. So what I find interesting though is I would think this isn't a ringing endorsement for Slayton post June 1st. I know the Giants could do a June 1st cut now if they wanted to, but I don't think they have enough depth right now to do that. And it doesn't really buy them anything cap-wise until June 1st. So they're in no hurry to do that. The only reason they would do that is if they wanted to do Slayton a favor. So I think they've already done him a favor by giving him a number of contracts. So I think you're going to hold him through. You would hold him through till closer to June 1st, see what happens in the draft, or if you sign anybody else. These guys are interesting. Now, Austin isn't going to bring you the sure-handed thing that you're hoping for. He's a Slayton in a way that he does drop the ball. He's never been the main guy, even the second guy or third guy. He's been a guy who's played around a little bit, but he brings some special teams pieces. He's got some speed, so he does bring that, a stretch the defense kind of guy. And you've pointed out in the last show, it's been pointed out by other folks, Isaiah Likely's probably going to be the slot guy, the big slot guy. So we need some of these quicker, small, fast guys that are going to run down the field and take advantage of that. So it makes sense. Mooney's a guy I think might be a little underrated by people here. He's played with some bad quarterbacks off and on, but he's played pretty well. He wanted out of Atlanta last year, I think, and he just really things just weren't going very well there. So
he was hurt too. Remember, he missed the entire preseason with a serious shoulder injury that kind of bothered him all year. So he missed all the summer, and he's, like you said, he's a better player than some people are giving credit for.
Yeah, and I think so. No, you're fine, totally fine. So right now, it's really, again, like we talked about with safety. I think we've got more numbers, and that was one area we really didn't have the numbers at wide receiver. So you've got numbers. I don't think any of these moves, however, preclude the Giants if they wanted to go. If they traded down in the first round and went wide receiver, or Tate sitting there at 5, I don't see any of these moves that would take you from doing that if that's what they wanted to do.
Oh, no, yeah. And again, people who are saying, well, why don't they get a wide receiver with some size? Again, you take what you can get that the free agent market has to offer. And last offseason, you and I desperately wanted the Giants to bring in a wide receiver, and we looked at the wide receiver market, and it was like, oh my goodness, it was like Stephon Diggs, who's still out there this year, and Slayton, and we didn't want. You and I were down on Slayton last year, but it was like there were no wide receivers this year. The wide receiver market was better, but it wasn't like, look, if you can get a 6'3", 200-pound wide receiver who can get deep, like Alec Pierce, it's going to, there was only one available and he was $30 million a year. So you take what you can get. And, for the money that they spent on these guys, again, they're arguably the second and third best wide receivers on the team right now. I just feel a lot better going into the draft now with these guys, that there's a floor in the room now. So does that mean that the wide receiver room is where I want it? No, but it's way better than it was a few days ago before these two guys were added. And your top wide receivers on the roster, because Wan'Dale was gone, looked like it was going to be Slayton and Gunner. And now it looks a lot different now with these two guys. I mean, as you said, Slayton may have to fight to make this team, which is a good thing. And we haven't even gotten to the draft yet. So I just like those two additions to the room, and I think they might pay off. The Calvin Austin, the more research I've done into him is he doesn't look like, and I've talked to some Pittsburgh Steelers fans that I know, they don't think he was used correctly in that offense at all. Some people were sort of like sorry to see him go. And when you look at him, he looks bigger to me than his listed size. And maybe this is me being wishful thinking here, but is there that much difference between him and Wandale in terms of what they can do and bring to an offense? I'm not sure there's a huge difference between Calvin, and Calvin's way cheaper. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see at the end of the upcoming season, compare Wandale Robinson's year to Calvin Austin's year and just see, is there a huge discrepancy between the two players and what they do for both teams? I may be dead wrong about this. We'll find out. I know I'm putting myself out on a limb a little bit here, but I just don't know, in terms of their size, ability, what they bring to a team. I don't know if there's that big a difference between the two.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on there, and I think again it's today's March 15th, so there's a whole lot that's going to happen between now and then. But you kind of can see, you made the post, you put it on BBI, you shared it, bigblueinteractive.com, you shared it on X, which is you could see maybe if the way things are kind of lining up that maybe the Giants are targeting offense or defensive line in the upcoming draft, right? That's a lot of what they're doing is certainly leaving them in that position. Now, at 5, that still opens up to a number of different best players available kind of scenarios. And then the succeeding rounds, is being heavily on the lines. And I kind of got a feeling that you're right on that one. I think there's a lot of depth in a draft that doesn't have a lot of stars. People think that there aren't quality players. That's not true. Right. You just have to find the right players for your system. And there are some very big offensive linemen. There's some very big defensive linemen that have some limitations in the draft, but they might fit what the Giants are doing. So right now, free agency seems to be about filling the team. Now, one of the things and part of the topic of this particular episode was John Harbaugh's made a huge point on special teams. And a lot of these guys play special teams, and we've revamped the entire special teams unit, except for one guy. One guy is still there, and I'm a little shocked, although there might be reasons. Graham Gano is still on this team.
Yeah, and I got to assume, and I think one of the reporters, it was Dan Duggan, I think, said it may be injury related. Something about did he have a neck?
He had a neck surgery? Last year. He had a neck injury. Yes.
Yeah, so maybe they're waiting for him to pass a physical before he's cut. But at the same time, the new punter's contract is dirt cheap, and he's coming off a hip injury. So maybe they're just, he had to pass a physical to sign the contract. That's one of the reasons why
you mean place kicker, Jason Sanders.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, you're fine.
Place kicker, Sunday morning, place kicker. So Sanders was coming off a hip injury that caused him to miss last year. He had to pass that physical, so I assume he's okay, but maybe they're letting this play out. But I'm guessing it's Gano's neck, and they're just waiting for him to pass the physical so they don't have to do an injury settlement. That's what I'm guessing, but I don't know.
It makes sense. It makes sense. It makes as much sense as anything that anybody else can come up with, because what he counts against the cap is a lot, considering the Giants had to make a move, which we haven't addressed that. And we're going to talk about the offense stuff here in a second, but there was all this talk like, they moved Burns and that opens and we go sign people. I think they did that move to make it so that the people they did sign can be fit under the cap at the moment. They can't possibly, in my opinion, be done with playing with the cap, because they're, for where they are with the draft to come, the season to come, they're going to need a lot more room than what they've got right now. So some other guys are either going to have to go or their contracts are going to get redone.
Right. And they can still do Dexter and Andrew Thomas and create a lot of cap room for that. Again, I would, and I'm sure they would prefer not to do that. Of course, the big elephant in the room is, does Thibodeau have any takers? And right now we're operating under the assumption, what other reporters have said too, that the Giants simply aren't getting what they think is adequate compensation for him, so they're going to hold on to him. Worst case scenario would be you wait until end of the year before the trade deadline and see if anybody's desperate due to injuries or they're making a playoff push. And if that doesn't happen, you hope that he comes into play with the comp formula in the future if they lose more free agents next year than they sign, and somebody signs him to a contract and he comes into that. So I kind of agree with them not giving him away for nothing. But I mean, if the worst, I mean, they could cut him. I don't want to do that. But if they desperately needed money and they didn't want to, restructure anyone's contract, they could just let Kayvon Thibodeau go. But I don't think they should do that, and I don't think they will do that.
I
But I
don't
wouldn't give him
know.
away for a fifth round pick either. I mean, I'd rather keep him.
I don't know that that does you any good, though. I think cutting
Yeah.
him, you eat that entire salary because it's the last year. All the money's in this year, so even if you cut him, you're not freeing up any money this year. So the
Okay.
only way the Giants can get out from underneath that contract is they have to move him to another team in a trade. They could do a post June 1st thing, I believe, and that may somebody else who knows the salary better than I do could chime in on that. But right now, just releasing him will not help them at all on the salary cap.
Yeah. I thought the trade, if you trade somebody, it's the same way. In the salary cap ramifications are the same as if you cut them, though, isn't it?
The other team acquires the salary, so
Right.
that's why that it moves to their cap. It's all this year onto their cap. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So, do you want to talk offense or?
Yeah, let's start there because I mean the landscape of the offense in some areas hasn't changed much at all, and in others it's changed a lot.
Okay, so let's start with the easy stuff first, because I think the most interesting thing is the offensive line. But the easy stuff to me is this: the quarterback room looks largely set. And I went and checked to see what Baltimore did last year, and they carried two quarterbacks on the 53-man roster. So if Harbaugh does what he did last year, there won't be a third quarterback. I know you've been open to possibly always adding a quarterback to the room in the draft. That
Sure.
doesn't preclude them from doing that. But there's not, I don't know if you even looked at the quarterback free agent market. I don't see anything out there. Do you, that you would say add a third? I mean, they're going to have to add a third arm someplace. So it'll be a UDFA or somebody just to come in. Maybe it's like, again, bottom tier free agent that just comes in to throw the football. But right now, I think they're probably going to go into the year with two quarterbacks unless they draft one. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that.
No, I think so. I mean, Russell Wilson's out there.
Yeah.
No, I think
No.
I think for sure they'll look. It might be an undrafted free agent after the draft, but I do think, again, my personal opinion, the way they've done things in the past in Baltimore is their backup quarterbacks mimic or at least have the similar physical skill sets as their starting quarterback. They don't do that absolute polar opposite kind of situation where you have a mobile quarterback and then a statue is the backup, because then that changes everything you do if your quarterback gets hurt. So I do think they'll probably bring in a young guy, a young mobile guy who can do some of the stuff that Dart does in terms of he can move around so that if anything ever happened and they had to go that route, they don't have to shelve the entire offense. But for the most part, though, I think as far as veteran free agents go, I don't think they're looking at anybody. I mean, I can't see anybody unless maybe Tennessee cuts Will Levis and throws him out there. So you've got a really young guy with a big arm that you could just say, hey, we want to bring him in dirt cheap and see if we could get anything for this guy. But other than that, I think you probably wait until the draft, and it's either low round draft pick or it's undrafted free agent.
Right. And at running back, I mean, obviously they made reportedly made a big push to sign Kenneth Walker. And then there's those circulating rumors that Love is still on the table as a potential pick at number 5. But I think the room, as long as Scadaboo is coming back relatively healthy, I think this is a decent running back room that has a potential to be I mean, I'm a big Cam Scadaboo fan, so maybe I'm overrating him, but I really like him, and I really like him with the idea of running him behind Patrick Ricard.
Yeah.
I, I'm actually content with the running back room. It doesn't mean they can't add another one. Devin Singletary is back on a pay cut, and as a third running back, I think you could do a lot worse than that. So it depends on how you as a fan would feel about Tyrone Tracy and how John Harbaugh feels, what he feels about Tyrone
Sure,
Tracy.
for sure.
but I certainly can add another guy on day 3 here in the run, because I talked about this with Dave Del Cole, and he's high on. He says there's a lot of day 3 running backs in this draft that can come in and play. So I don't necessarily think that they have to. And I'm one of the guys that said early on, this. You used to shake your head when I said this. I was early on the bandwagon saying don't
I
sleep
know you
on
did.
Jeremiah Love at
You
5.
did.
But
You
now I'm
did.
almost think Giants fans are almost gone again too far the other way. Like I've seen posts like there was a post yesterday about we need to trade up for Jeremiah Love. No, we don't need to trade up for Jeremiah Love. I wouldn't. We don't need to give away draft picks to trade. That I would have a problem with. If I like John Harbaugh, but if the Giants gave up their second round draft pick to trade up for Jeremiah Love, I would have a big problem with that. But
Oh
I
my
like the
God.
running back room right now. I don't think they're going to add anybody in free agency, but I don't know if there's somebody out there in free agency that you would be interested in to bring in.
I think at this point, the cost, even vet min cost for these guys isn't really worth it. You could just bring in a young guy, whether it's, dear God, Love in the first round, or whether it's a running back in the second, third, fourth, fifth round, doesn't matter. That kind of guy you can bring in behind these guys. My only concern with the running back room is, again, and I know I'm a little bit more about it than you are and about a number of people in chat, is Cam Scadaboo's coming off an injury. We have zero idea how that's going to play out in an actual football situation. He seems to be recovering from it. Yes, it's not a knee tear, it's not a knee ligament kind of thing, but it was a pretty gruesome injury that he had, and he seems to be coming back from it. But he wasn't exactly the fastest guy. He survived on quickness and strength. Hopefully, because that, in some ways, that's one of the few things you probably don't lose is just being short area, quick and strong. Pure speed, that might have actually affected it a little bit, but he does take a pounding, and that's a big injury. So the Giants are going to want to play it careful there. The Devin Singletary signing doesn't mean a lot to me because, quite frankly, the way it's structured, the amount he's getting, the Giants could just cut him in the summer and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. So I do think they're going to look for running backs somewhere. And it very well could be Love. I'm not 1,000% against it, but I don't know, man. Running back so high and the way the league has evolved, I think the Saquon Barkley thing, which Ryan Dunleavy likes to just keep pounding into the. Dear God,
he won't let it go.
By the way,
he won't let it go, will he?
Have you ever seen a picture of a dead horse? Because that's your argument on.
He's still doing it today. He was doing it this morning again.
Right now, it just posted.
It's like, give it a rest.
I mean, because no offense too, right? If Saquon Barkley is the tale that should continue to be told by the Giants, and here's why. He went to Philadelphia. Philadelphia wins a Super Bowl. The premise of all that is Saquon Barkley, that told you, give him a good team. Boom. Well, he didn't do so hot last year. As their offensive line started to struggle a little bit, so did he. And you know what that means? It means no matter how great you are as a running back, if your offensive line has some issues, they're not going to produce. But he's also got wear and tear on him. Some of the flaws that we saw where he would sometimes go down a little too easy, doesn't always pound into the hole. He'll glide and slide and take the tackle for a loss. That began to show up last year in Philadelphia. You need to be very, very careful if you're going to spend that kind of an investment on a position that has become extremely interchangeable. So for me, I'm okay if you go that route, and the Giants seem to have a plan about how they're going to build the rest of their team, but it does then take you away from adding somebody at who might be a little low or a little lower, I should say, in terms of pure quality talent player, but might be more value to you on your team for the way it's currently structured.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So I think you and I are in agreement that they probably won't add another veteran right now at running back.
Correct.
But they'll probably add somebody in the draft, right? That's kind of where we're at right now.
100%.
Now it depends whether it's the 5th overall pick or on day 3.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
That does change things.
All right. So let's go to and let's try to keep these. I want to spend more time on the offensive line. We'll try to keep these relatively brief. I think we both love Patrick Ricard. Both you and I were like, sign him
yes,
weeks
100%.
ago. So that's great. The more I see him, because I'm going back and starting to look at these players, and I'm also hearing them interviewed and stuff. I love this signing. I mean, he's just awesome signing for the Giants, and it's to change the character of the offense. I underestimated Isaiah Likely, and I underestimated what he's probably going to do for this offense. I don't think we've seen the best of Isaiah Likely in this league. He's a much more dynamic player than I thought he was, because I've watched Baltimore games here and there, and they were very run oriented offense.
Yes.
They had a number of tight ends they were throwing to. And now that I've looked at him more, I think Isaiah Likely is going to have a career breakout year with the Giants. I think they have big plans for him. And I think fans that are thinking, why don't we have more size at wide receiver? He's going to be sort of a wide receiver in this offense. I think he's going to be a slot guy. They move around. He's going to play outside. He's going to have some inline stuff, but he's going to be moving around, and he's going to take a ton of those slot. He's basically a big wide receiver, and he can block. That's not the strength of his game. But if you look at his career stats, they're fairly pedestrian. He has a lot of touchdowns, but his overall reception numbers are fairly pedestrian. I think that's going to go way up here in New York. I think I really underestimated initially what he's going to do. And if you look at where the Giants spent their money in free agency, the big bucks they only spent on 3 players. Isaiah Likely was the top of the chart. 3 years, $40 million. They gave Illuminor 3 years, $39 million, and Tremaine Edmonds 3 years, $36 million. Nobody else is even close. The next closest one is Stout at $12 million. So the big 3 that they signed were Likely, Illuminor, and Edmonds. So keep that in mind. Those were the guys they valued on the open market. And at the top of the chart was Likely. And I don't think we're paying enough attention to Likely right now. Fans, I mean, I think Likely may be the number 2 receiver on this team right now behind Neighbors in terms of the number of targets he's going to get, is my feeling. And that's going to be a big change for him too.
Yeah, I think, we talked about it in the last show with Baltimore. He played with Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews was the intermediate, the guy that the security blanket, so to speak, and Likely was expected to make the bigger play. So his overall target pieces were a little less. His plays were a little bit bigger. In this offense, I almost think he's going to become more the main focus at that position, including jumping out into the slot. Theo Johnson becomes the guy who's going to get more opportunities in terms of big plays, but maybe less of the focal point from that position group, which will be interesting. And he's got to correct some of his drops and stuff.
Right.
But the combination between those two is going to be very interesting on how that works. And I do think, though, that if you mix the two together, you take the tight end group and you take the wide receiver group, it takes the pressure off the Giants to have to get this true big time number 2 guy opposite Neighbors.
Right. Correct.
And you could do more of a rotational piece on the outside at the wide receiver piece. They're going to be pieces, and Likely is going to be the guy in line off and on, or off a little bit, and then split out to the slot when they want to go to obvious passing situation kind of deals. I think it gives them a lot of flexibility that it makes the draft not have to be, we got to go get a particular guy at wide receiver. We'll be happy to get one, but this does take the pressure off. And the veteran signings at wide receiver seem to also indicate that too. Now you got guys you can count on. They know how to play. I don't have to worry about a rookie just hoping he's going to be able to do something. They've taken the pressure off themselves of having to add that true number 2 guy.
Right. And I'm not advocating for this right now. I would not be upset with it at all. But if you added Carnell Tate to this group now, it becomes sick in terms of if he's your ex with Neighbors and Likely. So I'm not a big fantasy football guy, but I have to think Isaiah Likely is going to become Jackson Dart's favorite red zone target. And so if you want a tight end that's probably going to score a lot of touchdowns, I'm going to because Likely is a 50-50 guy. If you look at his highlights, my goodness, if you get the ball near him in a 50-50 situation, and he's a better run after the catch guy than I thought as well too. So again, I think Likely right now is going to be Jackson Dart's second favorite target right now. We'll have to see what happens in the draft. But if you added a Carnell Tate to this, then the Giants offense might even reach a new tier. So
Sure.
again, I'm not advocating for Tate. I'm just saying if they do take Tate, keep that in mind. And people are going to say you don't draft a number 2 wide receiver with the 5th overall pick. I get that, but some people absolutely love him. Some people are like, but I think he would be a perfect complement to Neighbors in this offense and another red zone target. If you want the Giants to score more touchdowns and give Jackson Dart more help, you want to add a tall wide receiver in would do well in the red zone at some point, and that's what Tate does. I don't think they're still on the roster. Maybe somebody like a Bo Collins surprises us still, but again, we'll have to see. He may not even make the team. Again, he was a sort of a flash in the pan last year and then sort of flamed out during the year. So, real quick on the wide receivers, we have 13. That surprises me. All 13 are under contract. These are guys that are currently on the roster under contract. Most of them obviously can't be here. But again, if you look at, and this depth chart is something I put together. So don't take this with a grain of salt. This isn't where they really stack. This is me just kind of guessing right now. But if you notice, I've got Mooney and Austin as the second team guys right now, and Mooney actually might be the starter on this team if the season was going to start today, if he knew the offense over Slayton. So you can see how high they are already, how important these are, because they elevated the rest of the room. Because if they are not there, then we're talking about like Bo Collins and Gunner being the next guys up, or Isaiah Hodgins. And these other guys are just right now, or until proven otherwise, are camp special teams guys. So they really changed the wide receiver room in the last couple of days. And like you just said, it's not as desperate to say, oh my God, we got to draft a wide receiver now. I think they're going to. I'd be shocked if they don't draft a wide receiver, but I don't think they have to force a pick now.
Well, and the thing too, the other part that plays into this is the Malik Neighbors factor. I don't care what videos we saw recently of him being better, until you know for sure when it gets to be camp time that he will be available week 1. The Giants have to go into this assuming that he won't be. You would be stupid not to. If you count on a guy coming off an injury that you don't know and you count on him just to be there, we saw this with Andrew Thomas, right? Through the offseason, everybody was like, he's going to be fine. Thomas is going to be fine. Then it went into camp and it started to spread out. Next thing you know, he's not playing early in the season. You're like, oh, shit. But that's what they plan for. So you got to plan that Neighbors isn't going to be there. So whether or not you draft the guy at 5 or you draft somebody in the draft itself, I think you're going to draft a receiver regardless. Somewhere in there's going to be a receiver, or they sign another receiver. Now, there's still trade possibilities, because I still think Kayvon Thibodeau is going to get moved prior to the draft. And it's either going to be for another player, which makes the most sense, because, again, back to the contract thing, the other team has to take on the salary. So generally teams, if they're going to do that, they're probably going to want to get rid of a player that they want the salary to go away to. And that might be the only way the Giants get true value. Get a player they can really use at that position, or on the team, that versus a pick, which, because of the salary coming in, teams don't want to give up the pick. They drop down 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, because I don't want to take that salary. The Giants will be better off getting a veteran player. So if a trade happens, it may be for a wide receiver.
Right. Correct. And it could also be for another player on defense, like a defensive lineman. So I agree. So look, they want to move Kayvon. I think it's just whether they can get adequate compensation for him at this point. And I wouldn't give him away. So, was there anything else at wide receiver you wanted before we go? To me, the fun part here is going to be to address the offensive line.
Yeah, no, let's jump to the O-line.
Okay, so this actually is not as bad as a lot of fans seem to be freaking out with. If you're okay with the Giants' offensive line, and you get a lot of people saying, "Oh my God, we got to bring back Carmen Brasillo. We got to bring back Carmen. He's a magician. Look what he did." Yeah, he's a good coach, but again, these were the players that played well under him, and they're basically all back except for Greg Van Roten right now. The only guy they have lost is Schlottman, who was the backup center. And again, that's a position moving forward that there'll have to be some. That's another. By the way, John, and you bring this up all the time. That would be another reason to bring back Greg Van Roten too, because he can play center.
Right,
So
right.
so if you look at this right now, it's the same offensive line minus Greg Van Roten, and if the Giants sign a guard, and there are some that are still out there, and some of the ones that we talked about off the bat. Wyatt Teller is still out there from Cleveland. Joe Bitonio is still out there from Cleveland. Those two guys have played at a fairly high level, and they've played for the Giants' current offensive line coach. If in the next few days we sign Teller or Bitonio, this line is going to be better than it was last year, but we'll have to see. And if they want to bring in another body, just to have a veteran in there that I would not feel as great about, but would not be bad. They could bring back Kevin Zeitler. He's still out there. And you already brought up Daniel Filet. Is it Flalel? Whatever it is.
I call him Falele, but I'm not sure if I'm saying it right.
Falele, you're right. Falele. So and then there's Greg Van Roten. So I think there are 5 guards. Now I'd rather do better than Greg, but I would bring back Greg as a insurance piece. Again, backup center, backup guard, that kind of thing. But if we sign a guard like Teller or Bitonio in the next few days, next week, this room looks a lot better. Marcus Bowe still is your swing tackle, which he was last year. He was a rookie last year who at times looked great and at times looked like he had to get stronger and deal with the bull rush better. And then Stinney is back as your number 1 backup guard, which he was last year. And if you bring a Greg Van Roten to be sort of your swing guy too, back as a backup, you would improve there. So the offensive line could change rapidly overnight with just one more signing. And that's why I think a lot of fans are still like, get Bitonio or get Teller at this point, because then the line looks a lot different. And you still haven't gotten to the draft yet. So I don't think the offensive line's in bad shape right now. I want more players. I want more depth. I want to get a young guy or two in there to groom and develop to replace like a John Runyon next year, to replace whatever right guard that we have in here. But Illuminor is going to be here for 3 years or at least 2 years now. He's a 3-year contract, but it's at least a 2 year. So your starting tackles are set right now. And we don't really know what they feel about John Michael Schmitz, but he's your starting center moving forward. So the line is basically kind of set right now, other than getting that right guard situation resolved.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't this is Schmidt's last year of his contract, correct?
I believe so. Let me pull that up.
I think that's right. I think that's right. I think you're going to see the interesting part about this is I think the Giants are going to draft heavy offensive line. I don't necessarily think I don't mean it'll automatically be early, but traditionally, and this has been discussed by a number of people, I believe, I know Cy has brought it up, Dave Del Cole, who's been in the chat quite a bit today. I believe he's brought it up. The Ravens under Harbaugh, and whether you want to say it was Harbaugh or the general manager, it doesn't matter. As an organization, they drafted a lot of, second, third day offensive linemen to kind of constantly have that youth build in, and these guys end up playing. So what I'm thinking is they'll probably go after guys who fit what they want to do. Now, the big key to all of this is going to be how much of Greg Roman's presence brings influence to what the Giants really do. I think Nagy is the overall offensive coordinator. I think that's pretty obvious, and I think it's coordinating the entire offense. Roman's there specifically run game, but I also think it's also the philosophy behind that run game with the offensive line. And if that's the case, you pay attention to guys who were tackles that might not have the feet to stay at tackle, who are really big. They might move inside, and really big guards, but also watch for the Giants to get a center, because I think they're going to have a guy, whether Bo moves to center, they draft the guy and bring him in, they're going to have a replacement ready, because I just don't see them. What I think is a bulked up John Michael Schmitz. I don't think he can get any bigger. He's not going to get a whole lot stronger. He doesn't really fit the style of offensive lineman they've had in the past. So
Right.
I would expect to see them get bigger on this offensive line across the board. The only guy you really could count on long term, and that's precluding any injuries, is Andrew Thomas. Everybody else within two years could all be replaced.
The only guys on the offensive line that are signed beyond next year are Thomas, Illuminor, and Bo. Everybody else's contract is up next year. So that includes Runyon, Schmitz, Stinney, Hudson, Neal, Kubis, Holsky, who probably won't be here. But all these guys, so the entire, and Hudson, all those guys can be replaced. So, and I think you and I have talked about this. They're going to have, this is not a Baltimore Ravens interior type
Correct.
of line right now.
Correct.
So I think we're going to see the transition. I just brought up the post about Pregnon here. I lost it, but I would expect them to start drafting guys like that. And there are some guys like that that'll be in this draft in day 3 as well. And Isai and Dave Del Cole and Dave Syvertson have already talked about that, and I agree with them there. So look for big, strong, physical offensive guards, and as John is saying, a center as well at some point to groom, not to start this year. I mean, if they get someone like a Pregnon, he could start. But you don't want to count on a rookie to start. But get some young guys to start grooming this year. So next offseason, they're the ones that are now coming in to start for the guys that that are leaving, the Runyons and the Stinnies and those people. But right now the tackles are set. It's the interior. And that doesn't mean they won't add guys. They could still add a tackle again to groom, but you can only carry so many people on the 53-man roster. I am very curious to see what the coaching staff thinks of Marcus Bowe moving forward too.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what they think of him. That to me, that's an interesting. Do they see him as a tackle? Do they see him as a guard? I have him as tackle because he was the swing tackle last year, and he can play tackle, and that's what he's done in college. But maybe they see him as a guard. I don't know.
And I would not take center off the discussion. That's been brought up by other people. It's been brought up in the chat. He's got a physical stature that kind of makes him almost a natural fit in that center. That it'd be interesting to see if he can do it. I just don't see him long-term at tackle. And the question will be, is he the kind of guard though that they would normally want in their offense? He might be, we'll see. But a lot will be telling there. But I also, the benefit of the Giants, and then we want to switch to defense because we do want to kind of keep it somewhat tight. Some of the benefits of the Giants too about drafting some of these guys a little bit later is, even though the salary cap keeps expanding, and the thing that I tried to tell people before when they kept telling me Giants can make a ton of room. Yes, when you do that, though, it eats up room in the next year. So when you tell me, in 27, the Giants have a ton of room. Well, some of that room is already going away just because we're structuring contracts that are already on the books, and more of that's going to happen. Guys get signed. So if you can draft some guys at key positions and they can become solid players, that value piece on the cap is huge because you get them at a cheaper cost. And then you move right in to get some players at positions of absolute, game-changing needs, another wide receiver, the big-time defensive line, whatever it might be. Those are the kind of moves you want to be able to make. The Giants' biggest problem in the past is they're constantly having to sign free agents just to fill spots on like the offensive line or defensive line because they were so poor at drafting guys, period. Not just high in the draft, throughout the draft.
And that's when, like, you see Brian Burns, they just restructured him, and now they pushed cap hits to next year and the year after that. $44 million cap hits now, and those. So you want to get away from that. So, and that's why teams, like, people say, well, how does Philadelphia keep doing it? Well, they get a lot of draft picks, and they keep drafting guys. They let the guys go in free agency. They get more comp picks from that, and they just keep churning. And we've never been able to be in that situation. We're always, like you said, we're chasing our tail, trying to fill holes because we botched draft picks. Evan Neal and Josh Zudu don't pan out, and then you have to start signing offensive linemen because the guys that you drafted to fill those holes, those were high draft picks.
Right.
So, I mean, to me, a third round pick is still a high draft pick. So, before we move off that, so I mentioned I would like personally the only thing on offense that I'm kind of find myself rooting for right now in free agency right now is adding another guard. So I find myself kind of refreshing Twitter looking for Teller and Batonio right now. Um, is there anyone on offense? I mean, Juwan Jennings is still out there at wide receiver, but I've heard that he's kind of got an attitude. So he doesn't seem to be a Harbaugh kind of guy, but if you wanted a receiver with more size, I don't think they're going to do that. But I don't see any other wide receivers out there. And they got a lot, again, they got 13 right now. I don't see any other, that doesn't mean they couldn't sign somebody bottom tier guy for camp competition, but is there anybody that you find yourself like
I
eyeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's other people have already said it. I think I think they're gonna bring back Greg Van Roten. At this point, the way that they've been doing things almost seems inevitable that that's what they're doing, and count on the draft to fill in the other spots. I just can't see them spending more money on some of these other vets right now unless a big change comes with something they do with the cap numbers, because they're only going to have a minimal amount really to play with right now. So I think Greg Van Roten makes the most sense. His connection with Illuminor, that helps. Keeping that consistency, getting those younger guys, and then let's see what happens in the summer. But that's where I'm kind of looking for that. I think that's one thing, and it was mentioned in chat, and I agree with this one thing. If it were to happen, I would not leave out the possibility of Kayvon Thibodeau to Miami sending Waddle because they want to get out from under that contract. The Giants would have to give Waddle a new deal. They can't bring him in at the money that he's in. They would actually lose space if they give Thibodeau over and bring in even more money. They'd have to give Waddle a new deal, but I wouldn't see any reason why you wouldn't do that. That would solve a problem going forward. If you combined a Jalen Waddle with a Malik Neighbors
Track team.
with the other pieces that you
Yeah.
have, think about how much more effective Isaiah Likely would be out of the slot.
Yeah.
If you've got two speed guys on the outside who can absolutely just take the top off of the other team.
Well,
You
Mooney
open up
too.
so much.
Mooney's a 4-3, 4-3,
Sure.
4-4 guy.
Sure.
So you have a track team at that point if you brought. Now it'd be kind of Smurfish, but you'd have a track team. Yeah, and we know that at least Shane and Dable were interested in Waddle. I don't know what Harbaugh feels like, but we know that there was, they wanted him. So that's not a bad idea, John. So
hey, back in the day of way more physical football. I think it's a physical sport today. Don't get me wrong,
right.
But defenses were allowed to do more. They were allowed to be more physical. The Washington Redskins won a Super Bowl with the Smurfs at wide receiver. It's not unheard of.
Yeah. And I've seen this comparison with Mooney being Slayton. Again, Slayton has never gotten more than like 700 yards of receiving. And Mooney, again, I don't want to overstate the player that Mooney is, but Mooney's gotten near 1,000 yards in Chicago. So he is a better player than Slayton. In my mind, he's a better player than Slayton. So I'm not a big Slayton fan. And again, is Mooney my ideal guy? No, but in terms of who was out there and the price they got him for, that was a pleasant surprise for me that I had forgotten, to be honest with you, I had forgotten he was out there because he was a cut. And for those who don't know, because he was cut and the Giants signed him, he does not count against the comp pick formula, as does Tremaine Edmonds or Sanders. They don't count because those were cuts. So right now, I think over the cap has us not getting a comp pick, but they haven't factored in Schlottman yet because we don't know the details on Schlottman's contract yet. So, but there is a chance that the Giants would get a comp pick, and part of it is they're signing guys that have been cut as well as regular unrestricted free agents. So, So again, I would like to get Greg Van Roten as a backup, but I'm still the only guy I would still on the offensive side. I still would like to add like Teller or Batonio. That's who I'm finding myself for. Zeitler kind of as a fallback. And then as you said, Falele is still out there as well too. So let's go defense. Let's start with the worst part of this right now is the defensive line. And again, we don't know what the Giants' defensive depth chart is going to look under Harbaugh and his new defensive coordinator. So we may have a traditional 3-man line defensive line depth chart. And if we do, this even looks worse. But these are the guys that are under contract. We have no depth behind Dexter Lawrence right now, none,
Yeah, no,
unless I know virtually nothing about the player that's there. And the other defensive tackle spots, it's really thin. I don't know if Chapman's going to make this team. He's not a typical Raven type defensive tackle. He's very small. And now we do have a fullback on the roster, so I don't know what Chapman would bring to the table. Darius Alexander still there, and Roy Robertson Harris. But this is the area of the team that is really needs a lot of help right now. The Giants have not added anybody. They have outstanding free agents, Nunez Roches, who I do not expect back. I didn't expect to have a Neal back either, but Nunez Roches is still out there, and DJ Davidson's still out there. But the Giants are so thin here, and the only guys that are out there right now are all older guys. But I'm looking at DJ Reader and Daquan Jones are still out there as sort of backup nose tackles that would come in and spell Dexter. And then if you want a real 5 technique guy, if they're going to run more fronts, and these are names that normally you wouldn't want to bring in, but they still can play even though they're old. But Joey Bose is out there, Calais Campbell's still out there, and Cameron Jordan's still out there. And those are all old guys, but they're all still kind of playing at a decent level. But right now, the defensive line room is like shockingly thin to me.
I'm with you. I'll say the one guy who keeps coming up free agency wise, this is personally just my opinion, is Christian Wilkins. I want nothing to do with that guy. I want absolutely 100% nothing to do with that guy. The bullshit from when he was in college, the stuff from the Raiders locker room, which sounds pretty messed up. I don't want to bring that kind of crap into it when you're turning things around for the first time. I just don't want to bring that kind of stuff in. You know what I mean? So to me, no, I don't want him. Now, as far as the draft goes, because free agency, there's just really nothing out there. Calais Campbell, I'm interested in, but he's that second defensive tackle, or if they go 3-man line, that's what he would be. But he's not playing the nose, and you're not counting on him. You know, you're not counting on him down in and down out to play the run. So we're going to have to get bigger and better. Alexander's going to be interesting. And where does he fit with the way this team plays? Ray Robertson Harris is on the backside of his career. I mean, I'd say back 9, but I think he's all ready to put on 18. So he didn't provide much last year, and I don't know how much you can count going forward. So the defensive line to me is going to be a huge focus. It's got to be draft wise, right? Like if we don't do something else here in free agency, it's got to be a focus in the draft.
Oh, it's got to be right now. And that's what the point of my thread the other day was, kind of like, it's startling how, and again, if this was anybody else right now other than John Harbaugh, I would think I would be worried about the Giants don't understand how to build a football team. But again, John Harbaugh's teams in Baltimore for 18 years were built on the lines. So he cannot be happy with this. But I also don't think he's just winging it. So I've got to think they are going to hit this in the draft, but I also got to think they're going at some point, they're waiting for prices to drop, that one of these veterans that are out there are going to come on board, because this is just, I mean, they've got to get somebody in here to play nose to spell Dexter, and they've got to get somebody else in here just to, again, I'm assuming they're going to play more 5 technique. Now, Chauncey Golston, you brought this up before, he can play that too. So you can kind of factor in Chauncey Golston as sort of a 5 technique. And before everyone keeps asking who can play where, a lot of these guys can move all over the place. Even Dexter Lawrence can move all over the place. It'll be interesting. Again, there was a question, can Darius Alexander play 5 technique? These guys can move all over the place. It's just that there's not enough of them right now. I mean, think how bad this room is if Dexter Lawrence ruptured his Achilles tendon in practice. it would be, oh my God, we'd have the worst defensive line in the NFL. So they got. I mean, I've got to think the second round pick might be a defensive tackle at this point. And we've talked in our previous. Hey, that is a good spot, John, for our plug for our preview on the draft. We already did something on the defensive linemen, you and I, the guys that were. So
we did indeed.
Please go back and look at John and Eric's early thoughts on defensive line prospects.
Yes.
But yeah, I got to think that they've got to hit this hard in the draft.
Oh, I would think so. I also think some of them are going to be later. I think
Yes.
the kid from Alabama, Tim Keenan, the nose, he's just a big old nose tackle. You're not going to get a lot elsewhere, but again, the giant pieces. It's about pieces, and I really think that we're going to see some of that coming through of who they kind of target and where. Defensive line's got to be. I think it's even more than offensive line. I think offensive line, the Giants are trying to just fill in some young guys for the future. Defensive line, you actually need some guys to play like right now.
Play. Yeah, and it seems to be a fairly decent depth-wise defensive line draft in terms of if you want to get a run defender. Look, everybody wants the defensive lineman that can rush the passer and play the run. Those guys go early. And then the guys that don't go early either have an age issue, an injury issue, but more often than not, they're either mainly a run defender or they're not very good against the run. But you can get guys that can come in on day 3 that can be just sort of a big old body in there, just to spell Dexter Lawrence. So I would expect, like you just said, them to draft somebody on day 3 that's just a big old body, somebody that can just tie up blocks and give Dexter a spell. So, but they got to get more bodies here. It's not just quality, it's quantity. They just don't have the numbers here right now.
Right.
And so now at linebacker, I heard Rich Eisen the other day, I think it was yesterday, and he had one of our favorite movies, Office Space. The guy, one of the Bobs was on with him. Who's a huge Giants fan, and he knows his shit, by the way. He was on there, and he knows the Giants were on, and he and Eisen were debating whether the Giants should draft Carnell Tate or not. And Eisen was all in on Tate. And do you remember the actor of the Bob? It's McGinn. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, John. Is it McGinty?
It's like that. It's like, yeah, he was on there and he was arguing for Sonny Styles. And
Nice.
Eisen was going, Giants don't need Styles. Their defense is set. They don't. And I'm talking to the TV going, like hell we're set. I said, get Styles in here. I don't think Micah McFadden being back has anything that means anything in terms of like the Giants aren't going to address middle linebacker in the draft. I think they see Micah McFadden as a backup now. And I think even if they don't draft Sonny Styles, I expect the Giants to draft a middle linebacker because this is a really good draft for inside linebackers. So I think the Giants are going to draft a linebacker, and I still find myself rooting for Sonny Styles at 5. And I think if you put Sonny Styles next to Tremaine Edmonds, Micah McFadden's your number 1 backup, the room looks vast, and I'd still draft a guy. Then your middle linebackers look great at that point. But that's where I am right now with the middle linebackers.
And I will say, if you get Styles, it does. Let's say you didn't do anything prior to the draft, or at least you didn't do anything up to the first round. If you get Styles, because of his size, because of his ability, it does give you some flexibility if you had to kick somebody outside. So Carter would go outside, but if you needed to like spell Carter, Styles could jump outside and play outside if he needed to. Thus, that makes a Tibbs trade even easier. So there are different things to look at that way, how that's going to work with those guys, how that'll function. Styles is an interesting one. What I worry about, though, is, again, you can only play so many of the guys at the same time. And that defensive line, if you don't have the right guys, your linebackers are going to get overwhelmed with large men making their way to engage them instantly. I want Tremaine Edmonds. There was a great video someone shared that he does not come off blocks very easily downfield. He doesn't disengage as well as you would like. the more time that he has to just seek and destroy versus has to diagnose and avoid, the better. But that only works if you have defensive linemen up there who can actually eat up some of those blocks and force that. So, yeah, I like Styles. I think he gives you some flexibility for sure. But a lot of this is really still going to play off that defensive line. But stick to
I agree, but I think that I saw that thing with Tremaine Edmonds too, and I thought it was overplayed. Look, if you get Tremaine Edmonds and Sonny Styles, you have two inside linebackers who are 6'4", 250 pounds, both of them. And that the Giants haven't done that since the 1980s, where you have 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", 250-pound middle linebackers playing next to each other. I mean, that's the Harry Carson, Gary Reasons, Pepper Johnson type days that you're talking about. Guys have, and they both have long arms. So I would be all for Sonny Styles and Edmonds and having these two monster, and they can run. And that's the thing about, again, why Sonny Styles is such a great player is he can run like a deer. So it's like having a big safety playing that position too, who can also play the run. So again, I'm a big fan of. I find myself still rooting for Sonny Styles at that spot. I think he's a safe player.
So here's a question for you then, based on what you just said. Assuming that Kayvon Thibodeau is not traded and he's still on the team, who starts? You've got Burns, Thibodeau. You would have Edmonds and Styles. So where's Abdul Carter? Are you bringing him in?
Abdul Carter's a better player than Kayvon Thibodeau now. I mean, so at this point, Kayvon Thibodeau's your backup, and he'll play because you rotate guys out. But I'm not sitting Abdul Carter for Kayvon. Look, Kayvon Thibodeau is a nice player, but he's not. He hasn't panned out as the 5th overall pick in the draft.
So I don't want a $14 million backup then. So the Giants
I know that, but I'm not cutting him for nothing either.
But they're gonna have to do some. If you go that route, you would have to do something, because moving him to backup and putting Carter on the field, I don't want to hear you can never have too many pass rushers. Thibodeau's pass rushing stats have been going down each year. He would then be reduced to a backup player.
Yes.
And so now you got $14 million on the bench. By the way, the other reason I bring this up, and you're totally right with what you're saying. I'm not knocking your opinion on it. The other problem that I have with this is if you do something like that, right, your leverage ability, your position of power in a trade situation goes right out the window, even at the deadline. Everybody knows you need to move them. It doesn't matter. Right. You're not getting what you want. The Giants' best chance to move, and we'll get off this, I don't mean to beat that into the ground. Their best chance to move Kayvon Thibodeau, regardless of what other people try to tell you online, is between now and the draft. Because after that, if you do draft the Styles, you lose all that ability there, because now you've got too many playmakers in that one kind of general position, and other teams are going to know it.
Unless Brian Burns or Abdul Carter tear their ACL.
That's different, but then you're still agreeing that you're going to carry a $14 million backup until that happens.
I know, but all I'm saying is he's a very expensive insurance policy in that situation, who would play a lot, and then maybe your trade value goes up again. So again, the alternative, John, right now at this point, again, is to release him or to give them away for nothing. So but
you can't release them, because if you release them, then not only do you not get anything, but you ate all that salary.
But that's what I'm saying. So when you cut somebody, you don't eat the salary. The salary goes off the books. It's a signing bonus.
No. His money is all guaranteed at this point. There's nothing.
If it's guaranteed, I don't know if his money's guaranteed. Is it guaranteed money?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. If it's guaranteed, you're correct. Okay.
Yep.
But so then your options are reduced even further. So you see what I'm saying? You're stuck.
I would lower what I'm looking for in a trade per se, or I want less this year and maybe something from 27. But at some point you're going to have to do something. But let's move off that discussion, because we want to talk about that.
Okay. So do you want to go on to the secondary?
The only other question I was going to have for you is, with the numbers that we have at linebacker, if we don't play a more traditional 4 true call the edges linebackers, outside linebackers. If we don't play 4 true linebackers, then we're going to have an abundance of players at this position going into camp. So I got a feeling the Giants want to get back to more, yes, the two edges, but they're really right outside, left outside linebackers the way it kind of used to be, and two inside backers versus a safety playing the other linebacker spot, which is what we've done a lot. So in that case, I think, but if we don't, then we kind of have, I mean, I don't know how many more plays you can add to a position that you're going to have to reduce by a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't know what this defense is going to look like yet. So it would be fun to have somebody with if you're always looking for guests, we should try to get somebody who really knows the Baltimore Ravens defenses inside and out. And that would be fun to try to figure out what do they do in Baltimore with their linebackers and their defensive linemen, because that's the question that you and I are sort of struggling with right now is, what is this going to look? And the problem is with the personnel that we have. So even if the Ravens did it a certain way in Baltimore, they didn't have Abdul Carter and Brian Burns, so who have different skill sets than probably the guys that the Ravens had. So it's very confusing, John, to try to figure out, to me at least, is what they might do here. But I still find myself rooting for Sonny at this point. That doesn't mean I won't be happy with other players. I just think he would be a tremendous addition to this defense. And I'm so tired of people running on us. So anyways, secondary real quick. I'm sorry. Did you have something?
No, secondary. Yeah.
Secondary real quick. A lot of bodies here. The quality at corner is not great. So I think, as Cy has been pointing out, the addition of Greg Newsome is not getting enough attention. Cy's been arguing that he may be a better player than Paulson Adebo. I think that's going to be a bigger signing than we all realize. I don't think you or I think Deonte Banks is long for this team, but we'll see. Again, this is his last chance here. He's got a new coach. He's got a new head coach. He's got a new defensive backs coach. So we'll see. But as you've said repeatedly, you can't. His heart is in question here. So we'll have to see about that. But the other names behind, the backups here are all basically no names. And it was interesting when John Harbaugh came in and he had his press conferences. He talked up the defensive back room. He thought the defensive backs, and specifically he mentioned the corners, he thought they were a really good group. And I don't know if he was trying to blow smoke up these people's asses or not, but he liked this group. But you'd be hard pressed to find most Giants fans that could even name most of these guys on the back end. And then they did bring back Nick Jones, which is interesting. I'm trying to see if there's anybody else there. And Art Green, who's more of a special teamer, but they brought back Art Green. And I still think corner is still in play for the number 1 and the number 2 picks too. I would not be shocked if the Giants draft, and that's what they did in Baltimore. They drafted secondary players with early in the draft.
Yeah, it's the corner piece is interesting to me. Newsome is a guy. Yeah, he was a number 1 pick. He's a first round pick. He's moved on. He's had his struggles. You've got Deonte Banks. I mean, there's not a huge difference about some of the struggles these have had. Newsome hasn't had the question about whether or not he's willing to tackle or he's willing to play physical. It's been more just playing well. So we'll see. I think they're going to be more physical. I think they're going to be more of a hands-on kind of get in your face kind of defense in the secondary and stuff. So that sometimes by doing that, you can get away from, I need pure coverage ability because you can out physical the team. Giants got away with that a lot you bring him up constantly back when the Giants brought in a Dave Thomas. He wasn't going to really stay with people running down the field. He physically played them at the line and was able to cover them. Giants got away with that for a number of years with other players as well. So you got to do something, but I still think corner's a big need. I'm just surprised at how many safeties we have on the team at the moment, but I think corner's still a need that I would not be surprised first round, even at 5, they could do it. But I think if they drop a few picks, they're definitely they're definitely in a range to bring in one of those corners without question.
Yeah, and again, I keep emphasizing it, and Dave Del Cole's talked about this. Dave's still out there. The Ravens draft high secondary players. So again, I'm not arguing for it. I'm just saying don't be shocked that when the pick rolls in that it's not a cornerback. At least at number 2 as well too. And I know this is where I've talked before because I've talked. Well, they could draft a wide receiver at 2. They could draft a defensive lineman at 2. They could draft another linebacker too. We need more second round draft picks. That's why I would love to trade down too. But if Sonny's there, I'm drafting him at 5. But if they do trade down and they do pick up another second round pick, that would really help as well too. It'll be interesting to see how they handle this. Secondary, you just mentioned safety. They've got a lot of bodies. What I find is interesting is they've signed 3 safeties. So again, our Darius Washington is a small guy, but he was a playmaker, versatile chess piece in Baltimore, and I think he was a guy that Harbaugh targeted to bring in here, and so I don't think we should underestimate his value. He's at least going to be Dane Belton's replacement, but I think he's going to play a lot. We haven't talked about it, but Pinnock is back. What did you think about that?
That one kind of surprised me when they brought him. As soon as they brought him back, it really had me wondering what are they thinking of with Tyler Nubin, because Pinnock, you're not bringing Pinnock in to move Holland out. His contract's too big. That doesn't make any sense. So if you're bringing
Pinnock's
Pinnock
more of a strong safety like Nubin too. Yeah.
Yeah. So like what are you thinking with Newman? I mean, do they like Nubin? I mean, obviously we don't know any of this yet. But to bring him back, and the fact that he would want to come back to the Giants, it's a different coaching staff, but still back to the Giants. That was an interesting move overall. But then they followed it up with bringing another guy in. I was like, okay, safety has become a big deal here, not just in terms of bodies. They're bringing in vet guys, and whether they're vet minimum or not, these are guys that can play. But some of them, you're not going to sign a Pinnock just so he can play special teams. Because you know what I mean? So he's there to try to be part of that defense.
Yeah, Elijah Campbell's more of a special teams player, a gunner. And so I don't equate him more as a guy that is going to have a significant number of snaps on the defense. But Pinnock may. And Pinnock, my guess, is insurance that and a warning to Nubin that you better start playing up to your draft status. And I just think it's interesting. I think what's interesting too is I think we're starting to see some of the. I always have to laugh because they never. John Schmelk has always interviews the players when they arrive to the Giants facility. So they'll sign their contract, they'll have their press thing, and then he sits down in his one-on-ones. And his first question he always asks them is, well, okay, why did you come here? And again, me talking to the television, I always say, the money. The money's the reason why they're here. And it's like, don't tell me it's not the money. That being said, I think we're starting to see players also wanting to come and play for John Harbaugh. And if they were coming out and saying, well, I really wanted to play for Brian Daboll, or I really wanted to play for Joe Judge, I wouldn't believe that. But I do believe that players around the league, especially the ex-Raven players, but beyond that, I think guys might say, I want to play for that guy. And Tremaine Edmonds was talking about that, and he said he grew up being a Ravens fan, and his favorite player was Ray Lewis, and he said, I wanted to play for Harbaugh because I know much how he values inside linebackers, and I respected him because when he was a fan, watching his coach teams. So I've got to wonder if like guys like Pinnock, like you said, why is he back here? Again, the money.
Yeah, there's different.
But guys like this may want to play for John Harbaugh too. So I think it's a good again, none of these, like you've said earlier, none of these guys, their contracts do not preclude the Giants from cutting them. They're not, they could cut them in camp and it would not be a big deal. They can't cut guys like Edmonds and Illuminor and Likely, but most of the other guys that they've signed, there's nothing here that prevents them from. So that's the other thing. If you don't like somebody or somebody doesn't, they can easily get rid of these guys. But I just think it's interesting the numbers that they brought in. They brought in 3 safeties over the span of a week.
Yeah, there's and it's good discussion going back and forth in chat. And Big Dash, who's been posting some stuff and about Newbin, and perfect example.
Oh, I missed it.
Yeah. So perfect example, right? Is like, what was the big thing about Newbin after he got drafted that everybody talked about right when he was drafted? That he is a playmaker in college. He's around the ball. He intercepts the ball. He creates fumbles. He gets fumbles. Of anybody in the Giants secondary who is a playmaker, he's not a name that I think of at all since he's been in the NFL. The dude just is never around the ball. And Big Dash pointed out too that one of his biggest problems, he's a horrible angle taker on tackles. Newbin has taken himself out of like deep crossing because he takes the wrong angle. He just doesn't get there, and he does not have the pure foot speed to make up for it. He's not a spectacular athlete in terms of NFL players at the safety position. It just, whatever happened in college just did not translate either to the scheme the Giants were playing or just in general. The speed of the game, his ability did not seem to keep up with it. That's concerning to me, and I think maybe that's probably what's shown through to the staff coming in, which is why they've loaded up some of the other safeties here. We'll have to see. Again, there is a whole lot that's not known right now because this is all, it's all fun and games on paper. We don't know what's going to happen, but you don't spend this kind of, I don't just mean pure dollar capital. We're talking time, effort, and kind of scouting it out. You don't spend that much effort bringing in all these safeties if you're totally thrilled with what you got.
Do you think this says anything about Downs?
The one thing about Downs is that I don't know the medical question, but I just wonder, does he have enough to be that pure difference maker at a position that's so reliant upon everything else around them? There are some safeties, Ronnie Lott, by the way, people forget Ronnie Lott was not a safety when he was drafted. He was a cornerback. So he was a Pro Bowl cornerback as a rookie. Mm-hmm. Then he moved to safety later on. So there's very pure safeties, and drafted in the top 10 is pretty, and top 5 is almost unheard of.
But do you think that what they've done, or don't make too much, we shouldn't be making anything of it, that they've signed 3 safeties? Do you think that tells us anything? Not as him as a player. Just assuming you think he's a top 10 player. Do you think this says anything?
Yeah, that's not a position that they're going to draft in the first round. They're not spending. You don't spend this much time and stuff. Downs is not going to be the guy at 5. That's in my opinion.
That's what I was curious.
Yeah.
So the contracts that they sign these guys are not big. If they had signed a big I would agree with you. Again, I'm not disagreeing with you. Sure. I'm just wondering aloud should we be reading more into this should we be reading into this? Or is this, again, it doesn't matter because these are cheaper guys and they, like I just said, they can get rid of them. And this is not, or again, if I'm an outsider looking in, I'm going, oh my goodness, they did not do anything on the defensive line. They still have a hole at right guard. But man, they've filled in the other spots of the roster. That's, as an outsider, if I was going to be like looking at the Giants from somebody who wasn't intimately familiar with the team, I would be like, that would raise a red flag to me. So we'll see. Pinnock and Newbin are very similar to me in that some of the same criticisms that you just made about Newbin, Pinnock had his last year. Now, Pinnock played better under Wink and worse under Shane. Everyone plays worse under Shane. But again, I'm not trying to Wink. Don't start the Wink shit again, people, because Wink sucked too. But
hey, be nice. I'm trying to get him on the show.
Yeah.
No, seriously. 100%.
No, Wink,
100%.
you're awesome. You're awesome, Wink. But I don't know if people remember, but Pinnock's criticism the last year that he was here too was bad angles. Good run player, tackler, but sometimes took bad angles, and other than like occasional play like that long 100-yard interception return he had, Didn't make a lot of plays on the football and pass coverage. And that's kind of how he was out in San Francisco, too. He was, again, physical, aggressive, box safety. And that's kind of what you think Newbin probably should be doing here. I just hope I hope this coaching staff can get the best out of these guys, including Javon Holland. Look, let's be honest, Javon Holland did not play the way we expected him to play. And if he doesn't play well this year, they've got to start wondering, when can we get rid of that contract at some point?
Right.
Not this year, but at some point, because that contract's ridiculous too. They spent an absurd amount of money last year on Holland and Adebo, and they did not get the money that
and let's be clear too, right? Let Joe Shane's words come back to haunt him. We're not going to be able to pay a guy like, McKinney. We're not going to pay him.
Yeah.
And then you go and sign a Javon Holland for a bunch of money. It's like,
I know. And you drafted Newman. I mean, what are you doing? And so again, I know that's what drives me. There are these people out there that still come to, it's weird. Giants fans got like this with Daniel Jones. There were these cliques where, and there were the endless debates that went back and forth that people thought Daniel Jones could do no wrong, and he was a great quarterback, and we should never have gotten rid of him. And there are those similar things going on right now with Joe Shane, saying Joe Shane isn't responsible for anything that bad that happened here. And I don't get that argument at all either. There are people that are, and I'm not saying he's guilty of everything that bad that happened here, but he was the man in charge of this operation. And I keep saying the same thing. And it's the same thing Pat Leonard said. If Brian Dable got fired, why are you still here? And he should be feel very fortunate that he's still here and John Harbaugh still wants him here. And it's not just things like how he handled Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney. And we go down the list. In the free agent whiffs he's had and the draft whiffs he's had, but he picked the coaches. I mean, he wanted Dable to come in here, so anyways, I just think I don't want to turn this into a bashing show, but
no, but it's just, again, we're juggling right now. We're talking roster stuff, and we're going to keep it tight because we've gone an hour and a half. We're talking roster spots, current roster construction, I guess, is how we look at it. The Giants have spent in a very specific amount of time and resources on what you could say is definitely depth. Certainly it is camp filling. Some of them are going to be on the team. Some of them are going to be counted on probably to play a lot. Some of them it's, hey, who knows what might happen or might not happen. And others, maybe they are just there just to be the bodies. But you don't normally see early in free agency teams do that. To me, they have a plan. I think they have a plan here at the secondary part. Corner is they went and got a guy who could be immediately the second corner. That tells you they have no plans on Deonte Banks being the number 2 corner. If he somehow wins it, then it's a miracle. That if he's somehow on his team come training camp, it might still be a miracle. But if he were to win that spot, then that means he proved something. They're not counting on it. They already went and got a veteran guy that they're going to pencil in there. But I think they're going to draft corners. Safeties, I just think they're like the return on trying to get a safety this year with the cap the way that it is, with the way you need other stuff, didn't make sense. Go get veterans to fill the roster so that you can play the defense you want to play. Smart guys, they know how to play. They've proven in the NFL, and they're short-term contracts. I think that's the direction they went in here on this team.
All right, 3 last questions for you that I have. They may be expansive. All right, so are you doing anything else on defense and free agency? As I mentioned 3 defensive. Wait, let me throw some names out at you. So again, DJ Reader, Daquan Jones, Joey Boza, Calais Campbell, Cameron
Number
Jordan.
one.
I already mentioned.
Calais Campbell, I want on the team.
Okay, so would you do anything at any other position before the draft?
At this point, I would think no. You've got enough. Yeah. You got enough. The only caveat to that is if you move Kayvon Thibodeau, then you may go get a veteran guy to be that backup edge guy, because now Carter moves to edge full time. You get that backup guy, and again, I'm still not really sure what are you doing with Chauncey Golston. I don't know how he fits.
Yeah.
I don't know how he fits there. But that's the only way. The only other thing I would do, unless they pick up a veteran corner, if Marshawn Lattimore is still out there and they want that veteran corner so they can just and then that means that they're pretty much not going to be doing anything with Banks. But
that was my only other question in my mind, not for you, but my mind too, was what you just said. Do they still add another corner at this point or not, like another veteran and just get another insurance policy?
Yeah.
I also want to throw out with Chauncey Golston, if the Giants do put out a new depth chart that has 3 defensive linemen listed, Golston goes to the defensive line. So that would take another body out away from the linebackers and add it to the defensive line as well too. So overall, on the defensive side, it sounds like you and I are pretty much in sync that if they're going to add somebody, it's probably going to be still defensive linemen. I'm talking about free agency, defensive linemen, but with the caveat they could do a corner still, but they're probably done with the other spots in free agency, right?
I would think. I mean, we don't have a lot of money left. I would think you'd have to. I think you'd have to be.
Okay.
You know,
well,
even
there's not a lot
moving
left. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, even moving money, that might just be so that you have your draft class and anything you might need to do later on. So, yeah, I have to think that they're kind of done at the moment at defense.
Were there any? I don't know if you had a chance to look. Did you look at who's still available? I looked at this morning, and one of the top 30 lists still had Russell Wilson as one of the best available. That shows you what's left out there. By the way, I actually think there's a lot of not a lot. There's still a guard. There are guards that still can help us. That's where I'm still kind of finding my polling. My again, Teller and Batonio. I would a 1 or 2 year deal coming in here, and then I would feel a lot better about the offensive line right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, I still think Greg Van Roten's going to come back because I think he's the cheapest, most obvious piece to this, because even though it's a new scheme, there's something to be said about guys who just know how the guy next to him is going to play. So if I have to learn a new scheme, at least the guys playing next to each other know how they react, know how when they go to move, if they have to switch, they know how the other player likes to do stuff. So I think a Van Roten with Illuminor makes sense. But, but if they go get one of those other guys, they go get one of those other guys. It's just, those guys have options. So they're not taking vet mins right now. They'll wait because they don't need to worry about it. These are guys that have, money from the years that they played. So a Teller, a Batonio, they don't have to sign with anybody right away. They can wait it out if they want.
I also say this, the Giants' best offensive lines the Giants have had while I've been alive, the Suburbanites, and then the line that played under Coughlin, they weren't the greatest players, but they played together for a few years in a row. And because they played together for a few years in a row, they worked very well as a unit together. With or without Greg Van Roten, the one thing the Giants will have going into this year now is they're going to have an offensive line that is largely, and if they do sign with Van Roten completely, will have been playing together. And Illuminor brought that up in his interview with Schmelk, saying it is such a luxury, an advantage in the NFL to be on a line where all the guys have been together this long. So if it is the same group, the upside to this is they all know each other. Even if it's a new system and a new scheme, they've all played together. They know each other, and that's going to help this line. They'll be better. The sum of their parts, their sum will be better than their parts because they'll just be familiar with each other. So I think the offensive line is actually not in a horrible shape. It's not what I ideally want, but it's going to be in a better shape than a lot of teams around in the NFL. I just want to add like that other player at right guard and then just start bringing in the guys like you just said earlier are going to start replacing those guys so we're not reacting and having to spend a fortune in free agency to fill those spots. My last question for you is this. So, and this might put you on the spot. What are your favorite guys that they signed? Like what of all the guys that they've signed, is there somebody you were like, man, I'm excited about this? Or
it's I know it's not the biggest one per se, at least not in terms of dollars. It might be one of the biggest ones size wise, but it was a guy that we kind of picked ahead of time that we kind of knew that was probably because Patrick Ricard just brings something different. we've talked about this. I've said this so many times that I get really annoyed or bugged or just disappointed with the fact that the Giants' run game, even when it's good over the last X number of years, it's always based on very passive blocking schemes, passive ways of attacking. So it's delayed draws, it's the shotgun snap handoff running back. Those are not power into the line kind of thing. So when short yardage would come about, when you had to control the line, it was the one time this past year we were so happy in a Giants win when they dominated the Eagles in the second half and they just kept running at them and running at them and running at them. That was one of the only times that we've ever seen that since the days of, going back to the 86 team, going back to the 90 team, going back to the Coughlin, our first Coughlin team. But even then, the running game was starting to go in a different direction. This, to me, with Patrick Ricard, just brings that someone's getting popped when they that just excites me. I do like Tremaine Edmonds. I just think he brings a little bit more overall skill and athletic ability to that inside piece. Those two guys, I would say, are the biggest ones.
Yeah, I was just curious. I find myself gravitating towards the fullback too. I'm way more high on Likely now. The more I've watched him, I think he's gonna. I think we're not realizing what a big asset he's going to be on offense. And I know it's minor, but the wide receiver signings this week are bigger. Bigger than I think some fans realize. Again, these guys are now. They got these guys sort of in the second wave of free agency because we're kind of, even though we're in the first week, they weren't the initial signings. And we basically got guys that, again, you can argue are now the second and third wide receivers on the team right now. Now that's an indictment of the wide receiver room too, but they're not garbage. They're not, and there are extenuating circumstances. There are players that have demonstrated productivity that they can do it, and they can do it at a high level. But we got them cheap because they're underutilized, or there was an injury involved, or there was quarterback play, or whatever. Right. So I just think there's a chance that these wide receiver signings could be very interesting. And I didn't think about your Jalen Waddle thing. That would change things for both teams too. I mean, change us. I should say this. It would change things for us two ways. Like you said, get rid of the Kayvon Thibodeau contract, but it would also turn this offense into a different level if you got Waddle here too. So I don't know if they could pull that off, but that would be killing two birds with one stone if they could do that.
Yeah, it would also. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into that we don't know anything about, but we would also matter what Harbaugh and Nagy and those guys think of a Waddle. That's the other piece too. There are still some veterans out there at the wide receiver position still, and I'm a little surprised that the two guys they got, only one really had a direct connection, and that's Mooney, but that's a couple of years removed from the Nagy connection. I'm surprised we haven't looked to the Kansas City piece, which had the Hollywood Brown that has the connection to both Harbaugh and Nagy, to Juju Smith-Schuster, who also has a connection and is a big. But I think Isaiah Likely in the slot eliminated the Giants looking for a slot guy right now. I think that took care of two birds, one stone thing.
I'd be shocked if they went after Hollywood Brown at this point, because these guys are too. I mean, I think the Mooney's signing precludes
too similar.
I don't see that happening. So, my hope this week is we get a guard and maybe a defensive lineman, and then get ready for the draft. So that's kind of where I'm rooting for right now, is offensive lineman, defensive lineman, or two defensive linemen, and get ready for the draft. I don't know if they got the money, but again, we're getting into that period where players are going to start to get a little bit nervous that the money's drying up and they didn't get the contracts that they wanted, and they're going to start worrying about if they're going to get their musical chairs, if they're going to get a team that's going to give them anything. So I'm hoping this is the week that somebody starts to panic a little bit and says, I'm going to sign, and I want to go to Harbaugh. I want, the Giants we're a bad team, but it's Coach Harbaugh, and if I'm going to sign a minimum deal with anybody, I'd rather go there. So that's kind of where I'm hoping this upcoming week.
So I wanted to because I threw this up there earlier, and I apologize, we weren't addressing it at the time only because we were already on defense. So looking at so first, thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. The Love Marshall Falk comparison, I've seen that in a number of areas. I'm not pro running back at 5. I'm just not. Will I be mad or disappointed? I won't be mad or disappointed. It's just, for me, it just doesn't. The Saquon Barkley thing really. I didn't want that pick back then for reasons that you just don't put the running back ahead of other stuff. Now the Giants are in a different position. Their offensive line conceivably is better now than it was when we drafted Barkley. Actually, even without having a known right guard, we're still better than we were when we drafted Barkley. Our quarterback is better than what we had when we drafted Barkley. So we're in a much better spot. I just have a feeling though that you've got Scatterby, you got Tracy, you got Singletary. You can get another guy 3rd, 4th, 5th round who could be that younger, will rotate them in guy that will be very helpful, and you could go other places. But I'm not 1,000%. I know you're more not pro, but you're more okay with it than I am.
Well, it's adding an explosive player that the defense has to fear. So again, I'm not arguing for. I'm just saying if he's the best if you believe he's the best player in the draft, and a lot of people do, and you believe he's the kind of guy that the other defense has to stay up late at night worrying about, and you want to make life easier for Jackson Dart, then he makes a lot of sense. Because if you put him in the backfield and they've got to worry, and then you got Patrick Ricard, as we were talking about, and you've got a stable offensive line, then Malik Neighbors and your Moonies with their deep speed, and Calvin Austin with his deep speed, then you've got an issue for the defense. So that's where I'm coming from. Where I would not be upset with it. My question with Love at this point is because I didn't think they were going to draft him. I haven't spent enough time really looking at him. Is how good is he? How good is he in comparison with other running backs in the league? So, like, if you were going to rank them, is he as good as some of the top running backs that have come in the last years, or is he just so highly rated because of this particular class, which is not great? So, the limited stuff that I've seen on him, he's explosive, but he runs a little bit high to me. I don't think he's a little, I like runners that kind of get their pad level down a little bit more. But he's an explosive guy who can catch the pad, and he gets in the open field, he's gone. So that's the thing. But a lot of the highlights, I have to say, this is why I have to look at him more. This is always dangerous. So my preliminary look at him has been looking at his highlights. And a lot of his highlights are very similar to Ron Dane's highlights in this sense. And I fell into this trap with Ron Dane, that the Wisconsin offensive line with Ron Dane used to create these mammoth holes. And Ron Dane used to have these 50-yard runs where he wasn't touched. And that's the same way with Love. When you look at the Notre Dame highlights, a lot of it, that's like, oh my God, anyone could have run through that hole. So I've got to find more. I've got to look at more plays where he's getting. I got to look at more of his 4-yard runs. To me, a running back can't just be hit or miss. He's got to be consistently falling forward and getting the tough yards too, especially if you're going to spend the number 5 pick over. So I've got to do more research on Love. I just don't know enough about him in regular non-highlight play type plays.
So he's 6 feet 212. One thing I do like is he doesn't have a ton of carries. He's had 433 total.
Right.
Ron Dane had something like 900 carries when he came out of college. He also had what was, you didn't pick up on it because of the issue you brought up. The holes were huge. You didn't see it till he got to the NFL. Ron Dane had one speed. The speed he got when he took the handoff was the same speed he had when he was like 5 yards past the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
He wasn't an accelerator. He was literally like, I mean, he's basically the equivalent of a Prius. He's like, he was quiet and just moved. Big flat feet, just couldn't. Love is
he was the softest big running back I've ever seen. You get to the line of scrimmage and he was instantly tackled. It was like
it was bad.
Bad. I still remember my father calling me up during the great NFC Championship game where he beat the Minnesota Vikings 41-0. The player that sucked on the field that day was Ron Dane. Do you remember? The ball bounced off his hand. It was an interception. They gave him the ball on the goal line, and he couldn't get in. I mean, that game would have even been worse for the Vikings if Ron Dane could have scored in the red zone. He was awful.
And my fear for Love is more, and again, I do a lot of things for more of a historical thing with the Giants. My fear for Love is actually more Tyrone Wheatley. A guy who had all this talent and you thought he was going to be amazing, and he gets the NFL. But again, you got to treat each player like they're their own thing. They're not the cumulative effects of somebody else. You know what I mean? They're their own thing. He has a ton of skills. And with the way the Giants are designed, it very well could be he could be that Bijan Robinson to Algier or the Gibbs to a Montgomery. It could be that kind of a mix with him and Scadaboo. So, again, I'm not against it. It's just at 5, there's some other things I really wish they could go get. But if you think he's the best player there, then the Giants will do what they feel is best. And, the one thing I will say is when we got John Harbaugh, I said right away, you bring John Harbaugh comes in, he does what he wants, and I'm okay with whatever he does because that's why you brought the guy in. Let him do whatever he wants to do.
Right. Real quick, again, I've been number one with saying upgrade the offensive line, but at the very least, they brought the band back together. And last year, the Giants were one of the best running teams in the NFL. So, and that's even after they lost Cam Scadaboo after the year, and not having Patrick Ricard and a coaching staff that's going to commit to the run. So, the baseline with the Giants right now is the offensive line they have is actually one of the better offensive lines right now. Again, if you haven't seen the show, go back. John and I spent a lot of time on it. I would still like them to sign Teller or Bitonio, maybe Zeitler, one of those 3 guys, and get a veteran and then draft guys. But let's not pretend the Giants' offensive line right now is a mess. They're bringing back virtually the entire offensive line they had last year that most Giants fans were saying, I mean, all Giants fans, as far as I know, said is the best offensive line we've had in 15 years. So can it be better? Sure. I would like to have a more powerful group, but the offensive line's not a mess. That's my position.
I agree with you. And Kenneth, real quick, I agree with that too. But let's also remember that Jackson Dart did miss a number of games in the middle of the season. The Giants still were able to run the ball, even with Jameis Winston at quarterback. So their offensive line does deserve, I think, a little bit of credit for what happened last year. It's not just Scadaboo. It wasn't just Dart. They did play overall. They played pretty, especially if you consider having almost no targets outside.
None.
No team was fearing our passing offense going in and week out, and they were still able to run the ball. I think we'll see an even better team that way this year, and it makes sense if that's the route they want to go is bring back the offensive lineman that they have.
And we have a run game coordinator by the name of Greg Roman, who is a master at putting together running attacks, and we have a power fullback, 300-pound fullback now. So, again, is it where we want it to be? No, but the offensive line is not in terrible shape right now. Again, I got in an argument, and I brought this up a number of times. I got in an argument with somebody on X. I was on the other side of it. The guy insisted we need to bring back everybody because last year's offensive line was so good. And I kept saying that doesn't work that way. We got to bring new bodies in. But it's going to end up being that guy was right. They're going to bring back the band, and they're going to draft people. And, again, I still think they're going to sign a right guard here. But let's not freak out. If you want to freak out about the defensive line right now. That's where you should be freaking out, not the offensive line. The defensive line right now is thin.
Right. So with that, I think we've gone long enough on this. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. This coming week, Eric and I'll talk about when we'll do some more of the draft position preview ones that we did. So we'll start getting a few more of those out there. And if anything happens, obviously we'll cover that. But other than that, go enjoy your Sunday. For those of you getting snow, I'm sorry. For me, it's going to be about 74 degrees, so I'm okay with that. So like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll catch you again real soon.
Get your Inside BBI merch here.
Thank you.
BBI merch.
Right here. Get your Inside BBI merch